The circle of fifths is a diagram which helps us to visualise relationships between different keys. It can be used for lots of different purposes, such as to recall key signatures, to write major and minor scales, to analyse music, to transpose music and to compose music. I will explain in detail how to create the circle of fifths from scratch. We will then cover how to use it and finally how to memorise it. So how do we create the circle of fifths? In the title there are two parts, a circle and fifths. A fifth is an interval. An interval is the distance from one note to another. We are going to use semitones to measure the interval of a fifth. A fifth is an interval containing 7 semitones. Let me demonstrate this with the interval from F to C. We move from one note to the next, all the way from F to C. An interval from the note F to C is a fifth, as it contains 7 semitones. So how do we draw the circle of fifths? We're going to start with a circle. We're going to imagine a clock in the centre. Draw lines to represent each number. And then unimagine the clock. Add the key of C to the 12 o'clock position. Count up in fifths starting from the lowest C, counting 7 semitones each time, and add each note to the circle of fifths clock. At this point, swap F sharp for its enharmonic equivalent of G flat. And we're back to C, so the circle starts again. These are the major keys in the circle of fifths. Let's work out the key signatures of each major key. Let's do the sharps first. C major has no sharps or flats. G major has one sharp, which is F sharp, so let's start there. Find F sharp on the piano and move right in perfect fifth intervals, counting 7 semitones, finishing on B sharp. Remember, we have to write F as E sharp and C as B sharp as we are working out the sharps. Now let's work out the flats. C major has no sharps or flats. F major has one flat, which is B flat. Find B flat on the piano and move left in perfect fifth intervals, counting 7 semitones. Finish on F flat. Remember, we have to write B as C flat and E as F flat as we are working out the flats. And here we have our sharps and flats. The keys of F sharp major and G flat major contain the same notes, but they look different on the stave. They are enharmonically equivalent. There are two other keys on the circle of fifths which have enharmonic equivalents: D flat major and C sharp major, and B major and C flat major. But what does enharmonically equivalent mean? It sounds complicated, but it's actually really easy. It means that the notes look different when notated or written, but are exactly the same note when played. Have a look at D flat major and C sharp major below. They are different notes, but they are the same keys on the piano. They are enharmonically equivalent. We now need to work out which sharps or flats belong to which key. C major has no sharps and flats. Let's start with that key. As we move around the circle to the right, the number of sharps increases by 1 each time. This means that G major has 1 sharp. Let's add this to the diagram. G major has an F sharp. D major has 2 sharps. Let's add this to the diagram. D major has an F sharp and a C sharp. A major has 3 sharps. Let's add this to the diagram. A major has an F sharp, a C sharp and a G sharp. Can you see that the sharps that each key contains include 1 more to the right each time? G major has 1 sharp. D major has 2 sharps. A major has 3 sharps. That must mean that E major must have a key signature of F sharp, C sharp, G sharp and D sharp, making 4 sharps. This same pattern of 1 more each time continues for all of the keys including sharps and flats. Now let's continue adding the number of sharps. Now we add the flats going round to the left. F major has 1 flat. Let's start with that key. Now let's add all the remaining flats. Now we've got to add the minor keys. Let's move the sharps and flats to the outside of the circle. Each major key has a relative minor key with the same key signature. We find the relative minor key by moving down 3 semitones from the major key. An interval of 3 semitones is called a minor third. Let's find the relative minor key of C major. Going to start on C and move 3 semitones down. And we've just found out the relative minor of C major is A minor. Let's find the relative minor key of G major. The relative minor of G major is E minor. Now continue to move each major key down 3 semitones. Can you see that the minor keys also move in a circle of fifths? If you prefer, you could work them out in the same way as we worked out the major keys, moving along the piano keys from A at the bottom of the piano all the way to A at the top of the piano and then circling back to low A. And that's it. We have created the circle of fifths. Now we need to know how to use the circle of fifths. The first way we're going to look at is how to work out key signatures of major and minor keys. Let's start with the major keys. Question 1. What is the key signature of A major? The key signature of A major is F sharp, C sharp and G sharp. Question 2. What is the key signature of E flat major? The key signature of E flat major is B flat, E flat and A flat. Question 3. What is the key signature of C sharp major? The key signature of C sharp major is F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, E sharp and B sharp. Question 4. What is the key signature of G flat major? The key signature of G flat major is B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat and C flat. And what about the minor keys? Question 1. What is the key signature of F sharp minor? The key signature of F sharp minor is F sharp, C sharp and G sharp. Question 2. What is the key signature of G minor? The key signature of G minor is B flat and E flat. The second way we're going to use the circle of fifths is for writing major and minor scales. Let's start with the major scales. Question 1. Write the scale of D flat major. First, write down a scale of D with no sharps or flats. And then add the 5 flats in D flat major. Question 2. Write the scale of C flat major. First, write down a scale of C with no sharps or flats. And then add the 7 flats in C flat major. Question 3. Write the scale of A major. First, write down a scale of A with no sharps or flats. And then add the 3 sharps in A major. Let's have a look at minor scales. Question 1. Write the scale of G harmonic minor. First, write down a scale of G with no sharps or flats. Now add the 2 flats in G minor to form G natural minor. Remember, G natural minor has the same key signature as B flat major with nothing extra added. Next, raise the 7th note by 1 semitone. Remember, to create a harmonic minor scale you have to raise the 7th note by 1 semitone. Question 2. Write the scale of E harmonic minor. First, write down a scale of E with no sharps or flats. Next, add the F sharp in E minor to form E natural minor. And then raise the 7th note by 1 semitone. Question 3. Write the ascending scale of D melodic minor. First, write down a scale of D with no sharps or flats. Then add the B flat in D minor to form D natural minor. And now you've got to raise the 6th and 7th notes by one semitone. When we raise the 6th note, the B flat becomes B natural, so we can erase the flat. Then we need to raise the C to C sharp. Remember, to create an ascending melodic minor scale, you have to raise the 6th and 7th notes by one semitone. Next, we're going to have a look at analysing music. Let's take the opening 4 bars of Lewis Capaldi's Someone You Loved and see how we can use the circle of fifths to identify some facts about it. First, let me play it to you. Fact number 1 is that the music is written in the key of D flat major, which we can see from the 5 flats that are written at the start of the music. Fact number 2. There are 4 chords of D flat major, A flat major, B flat minor and G flat major. Let's find these chords on the circle of fifths. If we write out the scale of D flat major, we can use the correct terminology to describe these chords and number them correctly. Chord 1 is called the tonic, chord 2 is called the supertonic, chord 3 is called the mediant, chord 4 is called the subdominant, chord 5 is called the dominant, chord 6 is called the submediant, chord 7 is called the leading note, and chord 1 returns at the end, which is called the tonic. When we add these names to the circle of fifths, we call the D flat the tonic, the dominant is A flat, the subdominant is G flat, and B flat minor is the submediant or relative minor key. This is a very typical chord progression used in many different pop songs. Chord 1, chord 5, chord 6, and then chord 4. Now let's have a look at using the circle of fifths to transpose music. Now I know the chord progression of Someone You Loved, I can transpose it and play it in any key. I know this is the order that the chords go in. It starts on chord 1, it moves left to chord 5, it moves inwards to chord 6, and then it moves outwards and right to chord 4. I'm going to shift the orange circles around to the left so the tonic key changes to A flat. Now we have a different chord pattern. Chord 1 is A flat, chord 5 is E flat, chord 6 is F minor, and chord 4 is D flat major. Let's see what this sounds like. Okay, now let's transpose it again. Now we have a different set of chords. We have chord 1 is E flat, chord 5 is B flat, chord 6 is C minor, and chord 4 is A flat. Let's see how this one sounds. Finally, we're going to look at using the circle of fifths to compose music. As we have seen, if we choose chords which are very close to each other on the circle of fifths, the chords will fit together well. Let's choose some chords which are far away from each other on the circle of fifths and see what they sound like when played next to each other. Let's choose B flat, G, F sharp minor, and E. Let's have a listen. Let's go back to looking at the chords in the key of D flat major, which we saw earlier. Now, let's circle the chords we can see here. I have omitted C diminished, as this chord is rarely used in modern popular music. Can you see how they are all very close to each other? I set myself the task of creating a piece with these chords. I think you'll agree that these chords sound much better as a source for composition. Now let's have a look at how we're going to memorise the circle of fifths. The circle of fifths is a great tool to use for all sorts of purposes, especially in music theory exams. However, we need a quick way to be able to write it down, so try this. We can write out the sharps really quickly using a mnemonic. Father Charles goes down and ends battle. The mnemonic for the flats is the sharps backwards. Battle, ends, and, down, goes, Charles's, father. Now change the sharps to flats. And change the colour. And we're done. So instead of working them out by using fifths like we did earlier, we use this mnemonic to write out the sharps and flats really quickly. Next, we use the sharps and flats to help us to remember where to put the letters on the circle of fifths. Please note this does not make musical sense, it's just a way of helping us to remember where the letters go. Add the F sharp to the 11 o'clock position and then take away the sharp. Add the C sharp to the 12 o'clock position and then take away the sharp. Now add the other sharps around to the right and take away the sharps. Now add B flat next to F. And then add E flat. And then A flat. And then D flat. And then G flat. And then add C flat. We could add F flat here, as F flat is enharmonically equivalent to E, but it is not generally used in the circle of fifths, so we can remove it. Now we can add the enharmonic equivalents of G flat major and D flat major. Now we add the number of sharps and flats to each key. You can add the minor keys in the same way as we did earlier if you want to. And it's complete. Thank you for joining me today to learn all about the circle of fifths.